All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Season 3 of the Rule 34 podcast. I'm your host, Jack, joined by my fellow co-hosts.
Dominic Castillo.
And Giovanni.
All right, so we are back. Dominic is currently serving a 2-episode suspension for last episode.
It would be like that sometimes.
No, but
Dominic went kind of crazy last episode with his choice of words, and
Yeah,
I'm gonna punish him.
he went a little bit off the rails. So the podcast has come to an agreement to suspend him for 2 years. It's been good knowing you, Dom. Who knew that the reason you'd get kicked off the podcast wouldn't be because you got canceled, but because of your language.
My apologies.
But in all seriousness, though, how have you guys been?
I have been pretty good. Life's going okay so far. School has started, so everything is going fine at the moment with school. It's just introduction with my classes. Hopefully, I passed them. And I also have a new gig for a job this upcoming Saturday. This Saturday. I'm going to be going down to the Rose Bowl and helping out as my runner position from the crypto arena. Working front and back, if that makes sense. And also this Sunday, there's going to be a boxing fight happening at the crypto arena. Go be there. I'm going to serve you your food. It's going to be a good time. Aside from that, nothing much else has been going on. My car is being repaired at the moment at the time of this recording. Nothing much else has been going on as of lately. How have you guys been?
How have you been, Gio?
There's this weird thing that happens to me whenever I wake up early. I just for the rest of the day, I just have massive depression. Today, my brother came into the room arguing about our dogs because they've been acting very annoyingly recently. And I was like, 7:30 in the morning? And then I got up, showered, ate. By 9:30, I was on my PC staring into an abyss because I had nothing else to do. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like I heard back from the job interview, from the job I applied to, at a K-pop store. They said they were going to contact me in a few days to interview, which is kind of the silver lining of today, I guess. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
I can definitely relate to you on that because there's a couple of times where I'm like, well, let me wake up early so I can feel like I have more time to accomplish stuff, and I just kind of sit there not knowing what to actually do. But going back real quick to Dom, are you doing schooling in person or?
It'll be online once again. Although now that I think about it, it's the only reason why I know I understand. I keep explaining that in-person classes is better than online. Obviously, because no distractions, and there's always pure focus on the professor, and on nothing else. However, I'm pretty much already established myself here. At home, I already have 2 jobs here. Well, 2 part-time technically. 2 jobs here. I already established myself here. I'm passing my classes at the moment. Oh, at the moment, that is. And I don't know. I've already accustomed myself to being online, which I don't think is a good thing. But so far, it's I've been, I guess, flowing through at the moment. That's pretty much my situation. Although maybe next year or maybe next semester, starting January of 2023, I might make the move to go in person. However, I'm not too sure if I should do it or not because, as I stated before, I'm pretty much okay at home.
If I were to offer my expert advice, because I'm basically an expert at everything. Just kidding. It feels like it really depends on because to me, if the main reason I don't want to do online classes is because of the whole, if the stuff that you love to do, once it starts becoming work, you're going to hate it. You know what I mean? So if you enjoy being on your PC, which I doubt because you're always moving about from job to job and doing other stuff, then it shouldn't really be much of an issue, I guess, because you could just be on your PC when you have to do work, and then you could do whatever else you have to do. But like someone else, like someone in my case who's into like, editing softwares, and I love being on them, but then if I start having to do it for class and for work, for classwork, it'll just feel like a chore, and it'll take all the fun from it.
You got a point.
Yeah, but I feel like if you're comfortable with your schedule now, why change it? You're just gonna add more complications into your life, like commuting, and then what if because you have to pay gas. Gas is ridiculous right now. Everybody knows that. But then you have to deal with traffic, and what if there's like a huge accident on your way from school, and then you're late to your job, and so on and so forth. And then what if in person is not what you thought it would be, and now you kind of regret having to do it, but you can't switch back until the semester is done, until the class is done, and then you're just stuck with a whole lot of problems that you could easily have avoided if you just stayed with what works well for you.
True, yeah, you got a point. If I'm gonna go in person, which is gonna be all the way down in Berkeley by San Francisco,
hell no, dude.
I'm gonna be alone, So it's like there's no, because over here I'm already established here. If I need help, I can just call up my parents or any other peeps that I know. But if I'm gonna go over there, I'm gonna be alone. So and I'm gonna have to find a job which won't be too difficult.
Well, you'd have to find a job to help you pay for whatever like your costs of living are gonna be out there.
Exactly.
And that's gonna be very difficult. Yeah, and obviously you have a good opportunity, but at the same time, my kind of advice is just to really think it over first off, and if you, like how Gio's kind of saying, like really think about your kind of I don't want to say work ethic in a way, but like really observe like if online schooling is truly what you work best with,
Uh-huh.
And like if it is, then you can obviously look into different options, because any education is education, so you could look into the trade schools nearer to you, or even community colleges that even if you have to go in person, at least it's an easier choice to do, because since you have a car, it's easier for you to drive to for example LACC or Trade Tech, rather than uprooting everything to go all the way to Berkeley for in-person classes, and for what could potentially be something that doesn't necessarily fit your style, where perhaps the in-person classes are just not your type of style because it's too many people in one classroom for you to actually feel involved or get the help you need, versus something like a community college or a trade tech where it's much smaller, or even like you go into a trade because you want to be hands-on with whatever skill you're learning, rather than a lot of times in school rarely is it ever like hands-on until like the final years of your degree and stuff.
Yeah.
So like that's kind of just my advice, is to like really think it over and really survey the options you have at your disposal, and just kind of just really look into it, really give it time, and really make that decision to a point that you're like comfortable with. You never want to make a decision where it's like in a sense you weren't comfortable making it, in the sense of like you just kind of have this feeling that maybe it's not exactly the right choice. Obviously sometimes you have to take risks, but if you can put in the time and thought into it, then do as much of it as you can.
Yeah, for sure.
And that like, to kind of give you an example, that's kind of what I've been doing this entire time as I've been on break. I've just been kind of trying to think of what exactly I want to do, because similar to Gio, I started thinking about it, and like to me, I'm still trying to nail down what exactly it is I want to make a career out of, or what exactly do I want to pursue. Because like obviously I really love this podcasting stuff, and more specifically when it comes to the sports side of it, the journalism of it all, and writing and writing these scripts up, making these videos. But like I also kind of had a thing where it's like I'm really trying to think about it, because it's like I could go into it, I could pursue it if it truly is my dream, but then you kind of run into the issue of kind of like what Gio was saying, but like in a different manner of like, I love doing it, but will I love doing it under restrictions, you know? Because
Yeah, that's like
continue.
that's like I was just thinking about that because I'm going through the same thing too because I've been thinking because I want to go to LA film or I wanted to go to LA Film School, but it's ridiculously expensive, and I don't get that much financial aid because I'm not a citizen. So it's kind of like if I go to that and I get a degree and I find a job somewhere, I'm not gonna like do what I actually want to do. I'm gonna do what they give me to do. But if you take like the freelance approach, you could pretty much do whatever you have, like the freedom to choose what you do at all times. So like with the whole like as you're saying with the whole journalism thing, if you get a degree and you go into a job, you might not have the opportunities to report on the stuff that you want to report on. You'll just be given a lot of, I don't know, in some cases it's just like a bunch of busy work. Or you might not even get to the point where you can't even report on anything. You'll be stuck in a position that you want to be stuck on. But then, again, if you take like the freelance approach and you continue developing your journalism through your own means and your own medium, it's kind of like it's a lot more work and it's a lot more risky because you really need to get lucky to be able to develop something that grows into something that can provide financial
Stability.
Stability and I don't know, be interesting for others.
Yeah, especially because like the way I think about it, it's like, see, the one difficult thing like when comparing it is because like you look at my style versus what's put out there a lot now. It's like, I like the podcasting side of like this freedom that I have to like talk about these range of topics and do my research. And this is not to say that people in journalism and especially the sports journalism side don't do their research and don't, get like evidence to back up their stuff. But half the time, what are these articles all about? They're clickbait articles. They're articles that they take stuff from, like, they take excerpts from player interviews or and stuff like that and cut it up and kind of use a certain like line in their interview to like get the big headline from it, because obviously they want people to read the articles and pay to read the articles and whatever. But like, it's like how many times, like the biggest example I can give, how many times have we seen, news sites purposely come out with terrible, like rankings of players, like, oh, here are the top 50 players this season, and they have terrible rankings all because what? They want people to talk about their article and all that. And it's like, to me, that's kind of the biggest thing I'm struggling with when thinking about wanting to go into this career is like, do I really want to go into a career where half the time they're not even being genuine, Like, one of the biggest personalities on TV, Skip Bayless, has made a career out of hating LeBron, and I can tell you for a fact, he probably genuinely doesn't even hate LeBron as much as he plays it up on TV, but he knows it's such an act that gets a lot of attention on social media and gets people tuning in to see him that he continues to play up that act, because it makes him money. So it's like, do I want to go into such a career that, to me personally, it will never feel as genuine, like it'll never feel like I'm giving out what I truly think. And so it's like, that's definitely something to think about as well, and obviously going back to you, Dom, just, it's definitely something to evaluate. And though at times it may not feel like it, you definitely have the time to truly think things over and get things together. I know a lot of times we're supposed to be made to feel that we need to have everything figured out already. And especially with colleges being like, oh, well, by the end of your second year, you should already be on your way to pursuing a degree. But like, you definitely are able to have the time to think about it over, or to think it all over. You shouldn't feel like you have to have everything planned already and everything set in stone,
Yeah.
Like, with me, it's like I'm not in school at all right now. I'm still waiting because to tie it in, I didn't mention it on the last episode, and I'll mention it here. I'm actually in Arizona right now visiting family, specifically my grandma, and you know, well, half of the reason I'm not in school right now is because I'm waiting to see if my family wants to move out over here. You know, we stayed here during the Colorado trip. I mentioned that, and then we're obviously here visiting now, and it's like my dad, my mom, and I, the three of us really love it out here. I especially love it. The way I described it to my dad, you know, a lot of people when it comes to like moving to, if you want to call it quieter areas in a sense, you know, like there's like the thing I told him was like people are like, oh, well, what about like the POIs, the points of interest? You know, does it have, you know, comparing it to like Los Angeles, does it have Glendale, Galleria, Americana? Does it have all these like malls, the beaches to visit? And I told my dad, I was like, yeah, you obviously want areas of interest, but when you think about it, how many times can you visit those areas of interest before it gets boring, you know?
True,
like,
true.
How many times can you go to the mall before realizing, okay, I've seen it all. It's not like there's anything new that I'm going to see when I come here, you know? Oh, hold up. All right, sorry about that. Had to get the dog out the room. But, yeah, you know, it's like how many times can you visit those places before you kind of have seen it all? And so it's like I've kind of been more open to moving out here because it's like, you know, it's kind of the best situation for my family in a sense, you know. But that's kind of the reason why I'm not like, or that's half the reason I'm not in school right now. Obviously, I'm also still trying to figure out what I'm trying to do. But, you know, thankfully, my parents have given me the time to really think it over, you know. They've always been willing to provide time to my brother and I to really think it over of what we want to do. And like as I kind of think about it more, I think, I don't know. It's obviously I got to look more into what exactly I want to do, but I might lean into the route of like how would you call it, you know, getting a job, and then getting a job that allows me to pursue my hobby or like dream on the side, you know, that like getting a job that gives me the time to like still do podcasting and stuff like that, you know. But I don't know, that's just kind of my line of thinking as I'm still trying to think all of these things over.
Yeah, we're like in a point in our life where a lot of thinking needs to be taking place. It's kind of like you could go into something that you don't really enjoy, but have something on the side that kind of keeps you satisfied. Or you could kind of pursue what you really want fully. Or just, I don't know, kind of give up on your dream and do something that will make you miserable for the rest of your life, but it'll provide enough financial stability for
Pretty much
you and your future family. I don't know. It's kind of, you have three choices. Pick one, but hopefully when you're on your deathbed, kind of look back and not regret your decision.
Yeah, let the podcast get an opportunity like Frosty, and we won't fumble it, you know. Oh man,
Dude,
that whole
dude,
situation.
if we had that, dude, we'd be chilling. Like, we'd be like every single day, just knock out a podcast, upload it, we're Gucci. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't get why you wouldn't want to do your job. You're literally, I don't know. Let's not get into it because we have other stuff to talk about. But at this point, it's kind of like we could just kind of push the other discussion back and just continue on with this discussion. Because, I don't know, we have like, 20 minutes left?
25.
And 25 minutes. So are we really going to have, is that really enough time to talk about what we want to talk about?
I think so, but it's up to you guys.
What do you think, Dominic?
I think we have a good amount of time, yes.
All right,
Okay.
well, let's just get into it. And if we feel like there's more to be said, we can maybe continue it in a later episode. But so the main topic we kind of wanted to discuss was kind of tying into all of our previous episodes of music reviews and stuff like that. And we kind of wanted to just kind of break down, in a sense, what is sort of our criteria for this? Because many times we've given two different albums similar rankings, or one album is rated higher than the other, and there's kind of like it's kind of been left up in the air as to like what exactly makes one album better to us than the other. What sort of what would you call it when it comes to our criteria? What sort of things kind of matter more than others? Like in the musical sense, what we kind of want to break down what exactly goes into our rating and like what matters more to us. Like. And obviously it's a combination of things, replay value, the overall theme of an album, and how well that's executed. Gio and I kind of talked about in the K-pop episodes of, sequencing of an album, how well put together an album is and how well it flows and stuff like that. But so, getting right into it, first off, when it comes to your guys' criteria, what do you think is like the number one thing you look for when you go into an album for a first listen?
I think for me, it's how, for me, the most important thing when listening to music is how it makes me feel. And it's kind of like every album is its own journey, and how well did that album execute its purpose, you know what I mean? So like when I listen to an album or just like a song in general, I think about it as I'm listening to it, because it's kind of like you could like listen for the first time just to enjoy it and then go back and like think about it, review each part, so on and so forth. But when I listen to a song, I kind of like dissect it part for part, like the first verse, the bridge, pre-chorus, the chorus, and stuff like that. So when I look at a song, when I'm listening to a song for the first time, it's kind of like how well or how much to my liking did this song, it's kind of like a checklist. Like, did I like the chorus? Did I like the pre-chorus and something like that? And then when a song it's not making it was not hitting those check boxes for me, it's kind of like, oh, I didn't enjoy the song. So I might rank it lower than others. But like for like an album as a whole, it's kind of like, it's a lot more complicated because it could have like a few bad songs, but then everything else makes it that much better. Kind of like that Kanye, how we were talking about in that Kanye episode, how like the bangers just made it a lot better, and the stuff that didn't hit, you kind of forgot about it because of how great everything is. But then if you use that mentality for every album, it's kind of like it falls apart very quickly.
Yeah, because then you definitely get into this confusing system of like, well, how much can a majority of the songs carry when there's a lot of lows to the album? Let's say you have a 10-song album, and there was like 6, 7, maybe really good tracks, and of those 6 to 7, maybe like 3, 4 of them were like all-time classics, but then you have 3 or 4 songs on that album that were just completely terrible and stuff. It's like how you kind of get into this struggle of a point where it's like, how well do those all-time classics carry this album's rating, And to me personally, I've always kind of gone by this like little system of like, okay, well, how many misses is an album allowed before it starts deducting a certain amount of rating points to it, So like I've mentioned it before, I think an album can still have like maybe one song that's a miss and still be considered a 10 out of 10. I know it doesn't make sense because you're like, well, if it's a miss, that's not a perfect score, but like it can still be a 10 out of 10 if the rest of the album was really solid, and like, but then like as you start getting more and more misses, obviously it brings the ranking down. But then you also get to like this point where there's just like so much that goes into it, like for me personally, I look into a lot of first off, I always contextualize things, where it's like, if I know this album that I'm going to listen to is supposed to be story oriented, and there's like a common theme that's supposed to be discussed throughout the run of the album, or like there's a set of themes that are supposed to be discussed over the album, then I'll obviously look into the lyricism and the meaning and its connection to like me, or how can I connect to it, or what situations can I connect it to. But I'm obviously not going to listen to like a pop album that's mainly just about hits. I'm not going to do the same thing of like, well, let me look into the lyrics and dock points for it. It's kind of like you kind of judge things differently on a like album by album, song by song basis, in a sense, because it's like, it's always like, though some albums are given the same rating, it's not like in the sense that you can compare them, in a sense, like you're not going to compare a Kendrick Lamar album to I don't know, a Bad Bunny album, like it's obviously two different things. And you can still give them the same rating if they kind of, in a sense, kind of like how Gio sort of mentioned it, if they accomplish the goal that was set out, or just kind of if they accomplish, in a sense, almost just the personal enjoyment you got out of it. Like you can still enjoy two albums and give them the same rating, even if they're completely like on different sides of the spectrum.
And also, I think it really depends on kind of like the genre that you're listening to, because each genre has their own pros and cons, if you will. But because it also depends on how much music you're exposed to, because like you're saying, basically, like two albums could have the same rating, but for completely different reasons. But also, when you start comparing music from the same genre, it kind of, to me, it's a bit difficult, because let's say like you say like an album is a 9 out of 10 because like how its musical arrangement and overall execution sonically was perfect, but then you go to like a different album, this is a 9 out of 10 because of how impactful it was to me personally. And it's kind of like, how do you describe it? Because it's like,
I think personal enjoyment and personal connection, definitely, because people would maybe claim bias, but like that's what all opinions are. It's someone's opinion, and people are obviously going to show bias towards albums that how you were kind of saying there was just like this connection to.
Yeah.
Like the good example I guess I could give is my top 3 albums of all time that have like remained changed for years is because of their connection to me. The 3 albums that I think are like the 3 greatest of all time, in my opinion, are 3 albums that I grew up with, that I was constantly hearing the music from throughout all phases of my life growing up, and it's like, and they're 3 albums from 3 artists that my dad introduced me to. So it's like I obviously have that close connection and that personal connection to those 3 bands, and specifically those 3 albums, and other people might not have that connection. Like if I were to show you guys one of the albums on it, it's like I would obviously go in with the expectation that because it's probably a different genre than what the 2 of you are used to, I would be more open to hearing your guys' opinion and know that your ratings are probably going to be lower because, or your guys' ratings might be lower in comparison to mine because it wasn't something that is as connected to you two as it is to me. And it can be the same thing where you guys hold an album in high value, but maybe it's not the same to others because they maybe didn't have that like personal connection to the music, or they didn't have sort of this, I don't want to call it nostalgia, but they just didn't have maybe this long bond, if you want to say, with an album where someone spent so much time with this album in comparison to other ones.
I think that's like the big problem with ranking album is just how like the objectivity of it is, because you have to, when you listen to new music, you have to be like, you have to give your unbiased opinion. But then when you have like that bias with the artist, it kind of like manipulates how you rank the album, and it just kind of like creates another problem, and it just makes it a little bit more complex. But Dominic, how do you rank music?
For me, as I've mentioned before on this podcast. For me personally, when ranking music, it's again mostly on personal bias in terms of how I could fit a song in a certain situation. So for me, my personal bias when it comes to music, as I've stated on this podcast before, I don't really enjoy K-pop music. However, on the other hand, I really do enjoy like jazz music, lounge music, classical piano, and such like that. However, I do give in some exceptions to some songs. However, that is only because of the situation, as in how a certain song can fit into a certain situation, whether it be in a movie, in a TV show, maybe playing a game, or like maybe during like a video game cutscene or something like that. However, it's a bit my mind usually is a bit miscellaneous in terms of trying to fit a certain song into a certain situation where it doesn't fit, or like let's say for example, how would I explain this? When we ranked what was it? The last Kanye West album we reviewed, my Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Some songs I did enjoy, but that's only because, like say for example, Devil in a New Dress, right? Some people might have enjoyed it. I really did enjoy it only because with that Rick Ross playing at the end, I personally just gave myself the situation of, a broke person or like someone trying to get through, like, I guess hustling through, throughout their lives, trying to get through every single obstacle that comes into the way. That's how I see it. However, when it comes to, let's say, K-pop music, I don't really imagine a situation or like a cool situation of me just listening to it. Only because I mean, one, I'm not accustomed to it. I've never really grew up listening to K-pop or just ever, I guess, giving it a chance per se. However, with my personal biases of listening to, like, again, classical music, because I mostly grew up listening to that stuff, as my parents do enjoy it, but they also do enjoy their sort of music as well, Spanish music mostly listening to parties and such as that. Coming back to my biases, how would you say? The situation is mostly was what is important. I do have my personal tastes, my personal likes. Some sort of exception. I can't certainly explain how my biases work out. As for example, as much as I don't like heavy music, I do like some like heavy songs. Like for example, there's this one song, "Overkill" by Riot. I mean, it's literally in the title named "Overkill" because it's heavy on the bass, it's heavy on just drums, it's heavy on the guitar. It's absolutely, it hurts you. It literally hurts your ears to listen to it out loud. I think it reaches like 110 decibels, like if you put it on max with headphones on. But anyways, how would you say? It's confusing for me. It's how would you say? I can't certainly put a pin on how I can properly critique my music, aside from it just being personal bias on the situation a specific song it could fit in. And what else? And I guess the repetitiveness of a certain song. As for like many of the albums that reviewed here, I'm pretty sure there's some many great songs that you guys enjoyed and many other people have enjoyed. But I've enjoyed it maybe once, but I wouldn't be willing to listen to it again unironically unless it's for like a review or just for like a second showdown of how the song plays out afterwards, listening from the first time.
Yeah, and I think. Yeah, I think that's a very common occurrence because I know Gio and I mentioned that as well. I forgot if it was just like off the record in a discussion or on a certain podcast episode, but we mentioned there's certain songs where it's like you listen to them and you're like, oh yeah, that was pretty good. That was a pretty good song off this album, or that's just a pretty good single song. But it's not. But there's also like levels to it in a sense where like sometimes there's songs where it's like, yeah, you thought they were good, but they maybe weren't good enough that you would want to put them in a playlist of all your music that that you're gonna keep listening to. It's maybe like one of those songs where it's like, oh, maybe if it comes on like on the radio or through shuffling, through like again like some radio or playlist, that you're like, oh yeah, that's good, but like it's not something that you maybe go back to continuously, and that also affects a rating of an album because people will be like, oh well, you don't listen to this song all that often, when it's like, well yeah, it's still good enough to give the album to help boost the album's rating, but it wasn't like like an all-time classic where you have to have it in your playlist, or like you enjoyed it so much that you feel the need to have it in your playlist and in your rotation.
Exactly. It's like watching like a very good movie. Like let's say, for example, for me, I really enjoyed watching Endgame and Infinity War from the Avengers, but I'm not gonna watch it again. Like I understood the story. I love the story. I understand. I love the CGI and the graphics and all that such. But I'm not gonna go out of my way to watch it again. Same thing with the music, as you mentioned. I enjoyed a particular song. I love talking about it. But what, like go out, walking with my earphones, just listening to it. Maybe not. Maybe later on. Maybe in terms of like searching through new music, or maybe music I've listened to before, but I've not given a second chance. Maybe I'll give it, that second chance. Yeah. But chances are not. Only because, again, it's my personal bias. Like, for example, like I enjoy listening to 80s and 90s Japanese pop music than, modern Japanese pop music, because it's just that bias that plays against me, because it's just, I guess, my personal liking.
And I think that's another thing, too, is like sometimes people struggle to realize, I have 2 points I want to make real quick. That one, sometimes certain music is just a product of its time, and like I don't know if you know, or like not if you guys know, but like I don't know if you guys have had a similar experience where like you hear like older music and you're like, okay, yeah, I can imagine this being popular back in the day, but it doesn't hold up to today's standards, and that kind of ties into the second point of like, it's always gonna come down to the person themselves. Because, like, with me personally, you guys know, when it comes to these reviews and stuff, even if it's just one song or a full album, I give it multiple listens to before I, like, make a definitive, like, rating on it. Like, before I say whether I liked it or not. But there are some people who, they only give a song one listen before they give a rating, and I've heard of people who only listen to maybe, like, the first 30 seconds of a song before deciding whether they like it or not, And then they'll skip it if within the first 30 seconds, they don't get their attention. And that's something I find pretty crazy, but it's always going to be different from people to people, especially when it comes to how much music they've been exposed to, because it's something you kind of brought up and Gio brought up. Sometimes a lot of people aren't exposed to a lot of music, so their ratings are going to be different because, maybe they're only accustomed to one certain genre or a certain group of genres. And it also can even make giving things ratings harder, because you're looking in the situation of maybe someone like me who listens to so much music and goes out of his way to listen to all these things. I'm gonna struggle even more. It helps me in certain cases because I can be like, oh well, since this was if I'm rating stuff from the same genre or the same group, it's like I can be like, well, these are the albums that I have highly ranked. These are albums within hip hop that I think are an 8, a 9, or 10. So it makes it easier to judge them. But then it's also like it gets difficult because I've been exposed to such music. It's like I start thinking, well, since this album is a 9, can I give this one a 9, even though they're completely two different things? Like I look at a lot of the albums that I consider 10s, and I'm just like, man, it's pretty crazy to think that like I have all these different genres where I'm like, yeah, that's a 10, but then I start comparing them to other 10s, and I really start struggling of like, well, is it a 10? And then I have to again talk myself back and being like, well, yeah, it's a 10 because it has its different set of criteria in a sense, and then also connecting it back to the personal connection. Yeah, this album, I'm struggling to maybe think it's a 10, but that's probably because I haven't spent enough time with it, and I can't compare it to, again, the albums that I've spent years of my life with that I can easily tell you it's a 10 right off the bat, and they're perfect, because I have all that experience with anything from you, Gio?
I mean, to add on, I kind of like it's kind of like interesting what Dominic was saying, how he finds everything, like his music basically needs to have a purpose and a setting to when you would listen to it again. And the thing that he was saying about K-pop is he doesn't like to him he doesn't find like a place and a time where you would willingly go out of your way to listen to that song or that particular album, whatever. But to me, because I've been into K-pop for so long, like I have songs from K-pop that have their own place and time where I would listen to it. So it really does depend on how much exposure you have to a certain genre or to a certain style of music to have. Because I feel like if Dominic listens to it more, he's gonna like slowly develop on like finding a place for each song. But it's just like it really depends on how in tune you are with your personal taste. Because with what you were saying, Jack, how some people listen to a song for only like the first 30 seconds and like already decide, yeah, this isn't for me. And I'm like that. When I listen to a song, especially with hip hop, when it's like 30 seconds in, even like less, and I'm not liking the beat, I'm not liking the flow, I'm not liking, like his overall, like the overall vibe of the song. I skip to the next one because it really depends on how, like, is it fair? Not really, because you're not giving the whole song a fair chance. But it is like something that happens when listening to music. Because, like, let's say, like, when I listen, like, if I were to listen to Dom's music or to your music, and I don't like what I'm hearing, I'm just gonna skip it. Like, regardless of how you feel about it or how Dom feels about it or how important it is to the album. If I personally I'm not liking what I'm hearing, I'm just gonna move on quickly. Because it's kind of like why would you? It's like it's not fair, but it's kind of like it's like a logical.
It's a logical. It's a logical form of thinking because at the end of the day, replay value is definitely something that like is like one of the highest parts of criteria. Like if you can't imagine yourself going back and listening to that song, then how great of an album or a song is it if it's not being like at least like in rotation of your music,
Mm-hmm. But it also has the thing with maybe at the time you didn't like it, but then like years later you go back to it, and I don't know, because your mentality has changed towards music, or just like overall as a person you're different, and you can see you appreciate it differently, or you appreciate it more. Because that's happened. I'm pretty sure that's happened to all of us. Or like at the time when like something dropped, you're like, yeah, this is kind of garbage. This is hot trash. But then you go back to it years later and you're like, yo, I can't believe I thought that way towards this album because it's definitely not that.
Yeah, or I've even had the reverse where I thought it was good at the time and then I re-listen, I'm like, oh man, this is not good. What was I thinking? And
yeah.
With a minute 30 left, I think the final thing I just want to add is when it comes to Dom's situation, especially with like the K-pop, but also I think for more people also when it comes to different just genres and stuff, and when it comes to maybe finding a setting, because I know I do similar stuff where I try and picture where I can imagine this song being played. I think another thing too when it comes to that is lyrics, because obviously when it comes to foreign language, whether it's Spanish or Korean, Japanese, whatever music you're listening to, if you start reading into the lyrics and start having that in mind, I think it also helps better picture a setting for such things, because with Geo, I've heard all these K-pop songs, and as I looked into a lot of their meanings, I'm like, man, even off listening to it, I could have pictured something, but then reading it changes it and adds a completely new dimension to it, But with the final 30 seconds, thank you all for joining us for this episode, another episode of Season 3 of the Rule 34 podcast. I've been your host, Jack, joined by my fellow co-hosts,
Dominic Castillo.
Dominic Castillo.
Well, thank you all for joining us for another episode. And as always, if it exists, we have an opinion on it. Thank you, and we will catch y'all in the next episode.